development on exception department study all the way to your stuff operation. Everything on this for construction.
Okay, everyone, we are now recording.
Okay.
The YouTube live streaming is not working at this time. We're having technical difficulties.
What's that one?
The YouTube streaming,
Thanks.
but we will get the recording uploaded to YouTube later today at the conclusion of the meeting.
Okay.
So we're ready to begin.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Downtown Commission meeting. Calling the meeting to order. And our next meeting will be, our next business meeting will be as needed, potentially Tuesday, June 11th. And our next formal hearing will be Tuesday, June 25th at 8:30. And now, Belkis, if you could swear in I'm sorry, I'm swearing you in. Do you confirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So say you do.
I do, yes.
Okay.
And I do want to briefly introduce our newest commission member, Jeffrey Pongonis, who is a landscape architect and urban planner with MKSK. So welcome, Jeff. We're excited to have you. And then I also want to know, in terms of order of the agenda, we do have the common staff approval list discussion and vote today, but in lieu of having it towards the beginning of the agenda, it'll be the last thing we do as an item of new business, so we can just discuss as a group and still have the cases run along smoothly. Thank you.
And Belkis, you'll do the roll call
Yes, Mr. Loversitch,
Here?
Ms. Maniaci,
here.
Mr. Slanik.
Yep.
Ms. Bartley should be coming. She's just late right now. Mr. Beatty
Here.
and Mr. Pongonis.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum.
Great. And Belkis, you'll please read the overview of the hearing format.
Yes, so city staff, that's me, will present the staff report and application materials. And then the applicant will come and sit at the presenter table here and be sworn in and asked to present their materials. If there's any registered speakers, which we don't have at this time, but any members of the public can approach the podium, they'll be sworn in and provided 3 minutes each to speak. And then the commissioners will discuss the case and ask questions if needed.
And so we will now approve the minutes from the last meeting. So do I have a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Okay, and
Second.
a second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And so that it's approved. And we have our first application, which is a new application, and it is 89 East Nationwide Boulevard. So could the applicants for this please come forward?
And I'll go ahead and read the staff report while they're getting started.
Sure.
So 89 East Nationwide Boulevard is located at the southwest corner of Locust Street in East Nationwide and is home to Jeff Ruby's Steakhouse. The applicant is seeking commission approval for an updated illuminated wall sign and illuminated projecting sign on the northern elevation. The wall sign is about 26 feet long, which is shorter in length than the existing sign, and uses with channel letters. The projecting sign is about 20 feet tall, which is taller than the existing sign, and uses acrylic push-through copy. The existing structure will remain. Submitted materials include a site plan, elevations, sign details, and mounting details. And if we quickly look at their materials here, this is just a rough site plan, but just showing the corner here and where those signs will go. This is Nationwide Boulevard, so we'll be kind of oriented to that corner. Here, this is what they're proposing. So this is that new projecting sign. So like I said, it's a little bit taller than what's there now. And then this is the proposed wall sign, so a little bit shorter than what is there now. And the last thing I'll call out here is these two images. So you can kind of compare a little bit, but you can see this is what's existing. It's a little bit longer. This is the existing sign, and then they want to switch it out to this. Both are illuminated, and then the structure for the projecting sign, the arms and whatnot, will be the same. They're just sort of switching out the design and the faces. So after review, the downtown design guidelines recommend that each building be provided one projecting sign and either one wall sign or awning sign per street frontage. And the guidelines also state that wall and projecting signs will be proportional to the building and that projecting signs have a minimum of 10 feet of clearance from grade. And the proposed graphics are consistent with the downtown design. Thank you. And I do want to note that Judy has arrived at 8:37.
And first we'll have to swear you in. So if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So say you do. And can you state your name and your affiliation on the project for the record?
My name is Brandon Ruby. I am an owner with Jeff Ruby Steakhouse.
I am Mark Caudill with Holt House Lackner Sign. So basically what we are trying to do is just update the logo. Columbus being such a vibrant city, we want to try and update the look of the restaurant with new branding. So what we've done is we've taken the old signage, updated the logo, kind of created a new shape, new look, kind of updated, more elaborate type of look for the signage. The signage is going to stay basically within the same footprint. The black band at the top of the building is the exact same band. So the only thing that we're changing is taking the Jeff Ruby lettering off and putting on new Jeff Ruby lettering, which is in the new logo style. With the projecting sign, I believe the existing projecting sign is slightly taller. I think the existing projecting sign is 24, almost 25 feet, whereas this one is only going to be 20 feet tall, but it has a wider footprint. So the overall square footage of signage is not changing with that projecting sign. So a little bit shorter, but a little bit wider to maintain the same square footage that is up there now.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, just to clarify, so we have 7 steakhouses right now across the country. And about 2 years ago, we went through a rebranding process with our marketing team. It had been the same for about 40 years and decided it needed a new facelift. So across the whole company, all of our signs, blade signs, and the banner signs we've updated. Columbus is just one of the last that we haven't had a chance to get to yet. So that same blade sign, if you will, the projecting sign, you'll see also in Cincinnati and Lexington and Louisville, et cetera. So the sizing is a little bit different, just depending on the proportion of the building at each location.
I only have one question. These are examples.
Samples of steaks or signs? We're not far from here, for sure.
Any comments or thoughts in general about the sign?
I think it's fine. I move approval.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
All right, our next case is 336 Rush Alley.
Okay, so 336 Rush Alley is currently a vacant lot bounded by West Capitol Street to the north, Highwater Alley to the east, Rush Alley to the south, and Starving Street to the west. The applicant is seeking condition approval to construct a 7-story mixed-use building with 135 residential units and 5,000 square feet of commercial space on floors 1 and 2. Building programming also includes amenity and co-working space and a 3rd floor rooftop courtyard. Materials include brick, fiber cement siding, metal panels, vinyl black windows, storefront glazing, and wall mount light sconces. All shown graphics are representative and are not a part of this proposal. Parking is provided from an adjacent parking garage. The applicant was last before the commission for conceptual review at the December 2023 meeting, where they expressed general support for the proposal. The commission recommended to bolster the primary entrance and consider flipping the U shape so the courtyard and pool face west to gain afternoon light. In response to commission comments, the applicant bolstered the primary entrance by adding wood look aluminum metal panel accents. The applicant kept the current configuration of the courtyard and pool to better engage with the pedestrian focus in High Water Alley and to retain views of downtown. Submitted materials include site context photos, a site plan, utility and grading plan, landscape plan, floor plans, elevations, building and wall sections, rendering and material details. And to quickly highlight, I just wanted, a lot of this is largely the same as what you all saw conceptually, but I did want to go to a rendering just to see that updated entrance commented on. So this is the update that happened. Before, the entrance looked a little bit flat and it was just, your average entrance doors. And so they really did a great job of adding some dimension to the entrance and some detail. And then the analysis is that the downtown design guidelines state that downtown's built environment continue to be enhanced and energized with new buildings, and that contemporary design is appropriate. The guidelines recommend that buildings on corner lots address both streets, utilize high quality and durable materials, have a high degree of transparency, and incorporate landscaping, and thus the proposal is consistent with the downtown design guidelines. Thank you.
Okay. Well, first we'll swear you in. So if you raise your right hand, do you affirm the testimony you're about to give today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So
I do.
And if you could all state your names and your affiliation with the
Yeah.
project?
My name is Brad Parrish, CEO of Archall Architects.
I'm Brandon Bogan with Flaherty and Collins Properties.
And
Paul Otto with Edge Landscape Architect.
Well, if you'd like, you can scoot your seat up here next to Brad.
Good morning. Thank you for hearing us again. We're back here to finalize this proposal. It's very consistent with what we showed last time, just with further refinements. Obviously, the entry, we took a great look at that. We did multiple studies on the entry to really draw people in. This phase two it wants to be and feel like part of the phase one, but offer a little bit of different amenities for the marketplace. So we did take your advice and did study about the U and flipping it, but with high water having sort of this, the festive lights down it and sort of being a very interactive street alley, we wanted to make sure that could be seen from the pool as well. So we did take into account the sun study, but we still felt it was better for the project to be facing towards phase one and downtown. We did sort of in developing the pool amenity deck there, we have this sort of, the pool and potential water feature there above the entrance to again, draw your eye up towards this sort of activity that's happening above the pedestrian level.
You said potential water feature.
Yeah, it's on the edge.
Are you doing a water feature?
Mhm. Yeah, it should be behind, it's attached to the pool in section there, what we're looking to do. So it's not the edge of the pool by any means. And then there is, for this application, there's a commercial component, which we also wanted to be activated on high water. It's about 5,000 square feet, as well as a co-working space for the tenants. I do have the materiality. Again, the wood, we have wood on the inside as a finish, and we also have a corresponding metal product to be consistent. So from inside and out, we can look, again, black brick that is very consistent with phase one, with the metal and the fiber cements that we had on phase one as well. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I know last time we spoke about this is the east elevation
Correct.
where you have the main entry. And then there's also a west elevation where there's a secondary entry for people, I think, residents coming from the parking garage in.
Correct.
And it looks like that also, although it's much smaller, it also is using the new wood look
Yeah.
surround as well.
Yeah, we wanted to call those out, and there's two of them, one north and south on the west elevation. And again, have, all the parking will be served by the parking garage and having at a focal point to come at home at night. And that will be lit with sort of a side light.
So the west surround is also a new addition. that.
Yes, yes.
Would look.
Yes.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is on your main new wood look entry, which, you know, I think is very attractive. Have you thought of lighting it in any way so that at night, you know, it becomes a very interesting element and also maybe even a safety feature?
Yeah, we started discussions on it. We haven't come up with a resolution on what, but we've talked about maybe linears in the wood that are in a pattern. So it is absent from this applicant. I can work with Belkis as a staff approval on the final if the commission would like. But yeah, we do want to add something. We want to also work on the signage component as maybe a halo lid as well. In that space. So there's some more development that has to occur.
So that could depend what the.
The signage and the light.
Yeah, we can do that. I'd be happy with it.
Scott, so graphics are standalone applications, so it would be a graphics application, and then they come separately for a lighting application. I did ask the applicant about lighting, and they do have some basic, you know, the basic lighting for the building. So this could get approved as a standalone application today, and then they could just come back later with just applicant lighting as its own application. Thank you.
I had a lighting question, it's a really minor one, but there's a cut of a up-down can light from
Yeah.
1972. I couldn't figure out where those.
So we're only using a downlight, and if on the north elevation, we have these recessed patios for the units that are on that elevation, they're in that cubby. Again, we didn't want that to be a dark
Yeah.
space, so they exist only there. If you look at phase one, we do not have any sort of building facade up down because we're want the streetscape to
Right.
really highlight the lighting in this area.
Good, thanks.
Paul, can you talk about the wood pavers in the fire area?
They're just on a pedestal system, similar to,
Do you have like a sample of them
no,
though?
it's, I
Is
can't
it,
remember
is
this.
it real wood or is it fake wood?
I think it's iPay,
Okay,
and they're just panels, 24 by 24 inch panels that sit on pedestals.
okay,
That work with a system of raised pedestals.
okay, cool, thanks.
So do we have any other comments? Or everybody is set?
Great.
Okay, great. So would somebody like to make a motion for approval?
So moved.
Any other discussion or comments? And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Aye, and opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
So our final case today is a conceptual application, and it is 132 South 3rd Street.
Yes, so 132 South 3rd Street is located at the corner of South 3rd and East Chapel Street and was constructed in the 1860s as a rear addition built in the 1920s. The applicant is proposing to retrofit the church building into a music hall. As such, the applicant is seeking conceptual feedback from the commission to demolish the rear 1920s brick addition on the east elevation and construct a new addition where the existing addition and surface parking lot are located. This site is listed on the Columbus Register of Historic Properties and is in concurrent review by the Historic Resource Commission. The applicant was last before the Downtown Commission at the February 2024 meeting, where the commission was generally supportive of both demolition and new construction. They recommended to utilize the quartz skylight option and to add more architectural design to the new addition. Since that time, the applicant went before the Historic Resources Commission for review and modified the new addition so that it is shorter in height and smaller in massing to maintain the primary views of the church. Materials were also modified to include masonry to match the existing stone of the church and metal panels. A mural will also be included on the south elevation. And submitted materials include a context map, site plans, floor plans, photos, elevations, historic overviews and perspective drawings and renderings. And the key item that I'd like to show you is this one. So you can see how, before we have this sort of grand staircase leading up to a rooftop terrace, that staircase is gone. And we have, a more simple streamlined addition than what we saw previously. We still do have a rooftop terrace, but it ends maybe a third into the way of the top of the roof versus extending all the way to see onto the street. We do still have an ADA ramp leading into the addition, but the key difference is just losing that larger staircase and, making things a bit more contained and streamlined. And then, of course, having this mural here. And so after review, the downtown design guidelines encourage the preservation of downtown's building stock. And in cases where demolition does occur, the reclamation of building materials for reuse. The guidelines encourage the adaptive reuse of buildings and recommend high-quality durable materials, a high degree of ground floor transparency, and that rooftop structures and spaces be complementary to the principal building. Further, they state that contemporary design and materials are appropriate. And in summary, the proposal is semi-consistent with the downtown design guidelines. Staff anticipates additional lighting and landscaping details as the proposal develops. And staff recommends that the applicant explore every possibility to preserve and adaptively reuse the 1920s edition of this historic resource. Staff also recommends that the applicant incorporate bicycle parking onto the site. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I need to sit this one out.
Okay, sure. Okay, so we just swear you in. Raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you are about to give today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So say you do.
I do.
Thank you. And can you state your name and affiliation with the project for the record?
I'm Jason Gay with Kappa.
I'm Sam Rosenthal, Schoolie Caldwell.
Okay, thank you. So you can present anytime.
Right. I think Belkis's summary was pretty much spot on. Really, since we last met, we looked to simplify the design, consolidate, and we also looked at the existing building again to see how we might be able to repurpose it. There's a couple diagrams that are kind of purple and teal in color that show in comparison where the new windows would go. So on the right-hand side of the purple there, you're seeing windows at the floor level and that they don't align with the existing windows. So we'd be making some Swiss cheese if we were to try and preserve that existing massing. There's also more views in there. So in this elevation on the south, what you're seeing is that the floor level to align with in our addition to align with what we're matching inside that floor level at the middle row would actually go through the top of those windows. So that is also out of alignment. And then this back view, this one really shows the biggest challenge that we had. Even if we were to say cover up the existing windows and adjust the floor lines, we really need that back quadrant. It's about a quarter of the building in order to create the loading ramps that we need to get in and out with the equipment for the shows. So we're essentially cutting an entire corner out of that building in order to create the space that we need. The new massing is shown in the brighter green in that view in the upper left-hand corner, how it wraps around, and it is shorter in height than the existing building as well. So the net result will be seeing more of the back of the church after that addition comes down. We did look structurally at how we might be able to make that alignment work. And here again, you can see those new proposed windows, how they align, or rather do not align anywhere close to the existing windows, making it much more difficult for us to reuse that space. So we also heard the feedback about the skylight option. We look to simplify that as well. And in the 3D view, what you'll see is that kind of gasket space between the buildings is now lower. And rather than being all glass, which had some fussy detailing that we were working out, we're creating a series of skylights that aligns with the stained glass windows above to keep that rhythm going, but using more of a conventional roofing system and lowering that mass to have less visual impact. So
Are these all budget-driven changes?
Some, but it's also trying to simplify and not over. I think we're kind of over programming the space that when we had that larger rooftop area, then it required more monitoring of exits, more activity, more programming to keep that space going and generating revenue. So I'd say that's more operational than it is strictly budget driven. We're kind of over providing space.
Former stair, excuse me, the former stair that was there too created a security concern that we were still struggling how to come up with a way to manage it.
I
So
really like that stuff.
Sam, could you talk a little, could you go back to the 3D, if you would? Can you talk about the sort of the roof cap on that lower massing that, I assume it's, copper, but what is that cap band?
So
Not the material, what's the intent of it?
yeah, that it'd be a metal wrapper band.
Yeah. I'm trying to picture what that looks like or feels like, or struggling with that detail a little bit.
I think the intention was to reflect, repeating the copper roof, the standing seam roof that's on the historic church
Yeah,
in the lower building. So pulling those details down visually into the addition, just to create some connection visually.
yeah. Is it trying to be a modern expression, a flat pavilion roof thing? What, I just,
It is, and also trying not to create, we looked at pitching it, but then all of a sudden you start covering a bunch more of the facade of the church. So rather than create, a gable or some other taller mass, we wanted to keep things low.
would it be simpler just as a brick expression straight up?
Sort of like the center mass.
Yeah,
We could look at that. And we do have cast stone as well. So the intent is to use a stone, it's not to match the building, but to be complementary to it.
yeah.
Thank you. My thoughts on this are that I understand the challenge is that you want the church to be the dominant building. And you want the, whatever else you're creating to really not compete with that or conflict with that or dominate that. But when I look at what's been created, it seems that if you just look at the new structure as a standalone building, it seems like it could be stronger, even though, it could be subtle and not take a dominant role. And I think that you have many, many excellent elements to it, but I think since it's still schematic, maybe that's the challenge to look at, the overhang and decide, like Jeff was saying, what do you want it to be? And in my thought, it seems like it's not, I guess, projecting enough to create that aesthetic. But, that might be impractical or it might not work with the church. So I think it's just looking at it and saying, if it were a standalone building, what choices would you make? And then, given that, how do you integrate it with the church? And the areas I would concentrate, I think I wrote it down here, were the mural. So I know that you have this idea for a mural, and maybe instead of it being like an add-on, it might be something that's integrated with the architecture. Maybe it's made of masonry, maybe it's tile, it can be very subtle, but maybe it's a real integrated design feature. And then because of that, other aspects of the new building are not, they can be more subdued or take more of a backseat. And then I look at the overhang and what you want that to be. And then I think what excited us a lot the first time with the project was a very interesting stair you had, and then a vertical element that had the potential to have landscaping, and that might not be practical and it might conflict with what you're trying to do, but maybe think about what can you incorporate that generates that type of excitement. But, you know, on your terms, what you think would work well with the project.
That's a good idea. I think losing that stair, the signage element, we really haven't gone very deep into what the signage looks like. And maybe there is an opportunity for a kiosk that's out there with some type of branding that reflects the new use of the venue, the branding that we come up with. We have not explored that at all. So, you know, that's certainly an opportunity to kind of take that stair and turn it into some type of landscape and signage element all in one.
I think that's the right path, for sure.
Well, this is schematic, you know, so this is the time that we can, you know, talk about what we think and they can integrate it. So any other thoughts about it?
I think back to your point about how you integrate that landscape and some sort of signage, I think there's a more creative way to get the ADA accessibility to with a ramping system that gets up to that entry level.
Yeah, that was one of the nice things about the stair is that it was unique.
Yeah, I mean, we all got excited when we saw the steps, I mean, I'll tell you, it was pretty cool.
Anything else? We're all good?
What, Sam, what are we looking at in terms of the roof, like for the big white area, like outside the fence, like what is that?
So we're looking at a topping slab. Have waterproofing down, just a topping slab, easy to maintain, can be hosed off, can put planters out there, but something that is protected and not have to worry about punctures and things like that.
Probably something more creative we can do, right? I mean, you got that area for the patio, you're gonna be overlooking that whole space. It's pretty rural.
Again, we're thinking we'd put planters up there, something movable but not permanent. Part of that is also just maintenance for
Yeah, I get the meaning.
we have people that run theaters, not landscapers.
I wanted to ask you, you know, that connection piece between the church and the new building that originally was all glass and now it's the roof with the punctuated skylights. Was that change, it sounded like the change was mainly because of concerns about the detailing and it not maybe with water penetration or other problems, or was that also an aesthetic choice? Was it driven more by, you know, like you said, the detailing is very difficult and might not be successful, or like you chose, I prefer this, I think this is a better aesthetic when we're in the building looking up?
A lot of that was budget driven because making those connections became very labor intensive with a material that was already expensive. So as we reached the peak of our budget limit, that became a change that we could make that still looked good and still provided light in that connection corridor, but allowed us to, you know, meet our budget goals.
I think, you know, everything, just make sure that when you're making the choice, you know, of course, the budget's so important, but then think about what you think is best too. And I don't know, maybe try to just balance it to make sure. But if you feel it's a good solution, that's great. But I'm just saying, since it's schematic, you could still rethink it and then, you know, say, yes, we rethought it and we definitely think this is what we have here now is the way to go.
Right. Good suggestion.
So on the inside of that connector then, Sam, those historic windows still stay intact, top to bottom. And the gasket is sort of connecting directly into that.
So there's a storm window that sits proud of the stained glass
A new
windows.
storm window.
We're gonna put new storm windows at the floor where we're kind of bifurcating that opening.
Yeah.
And that's the point of attachment. Once
Yeah.
we're inside the building, you don't need the storm window, so you'll be able to be up closer to it, but we're gonna put it in anyway for acoustics.
Huh?
And then two of the openings, there's an operable sash that we're removing and cutting the stone below the opening to create the passageway into the performance space.
Got it.
It's in the second and fourth windows.
Okay.
In that grouping.
also one other thought, and it might be a bad thought, but in just looking at this, you've created the plaza in front of the new space and you've stopped it, before you get to the tower portion of the church. And that might be a really great idea so that it doesn't conflict with the church or compete with the church. But I don't know, like if you extended that somehow more to the street, I don't know, that might create a very interesting plaza opportunity too. So that might be interesting to study that the plaza area you've created in front.
Pull it out toward the street, you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if that would not be good or be good, but I'm just looking at it and thinking that's something else to possibly explore and see if in extending it out, you create an interesting communal space in front, or if by doing that, it competes with the church and, just is a bad idea. But I think it's just something maybe to also look at.
Yes, generally, security of, patrons is a big deal in an event venue. And so we look at that grade level entry path as sort of our security checkpoint. So as people are coming in, that's one of the reasons we left it at grade,
I see.
is we can set up that equipment on the events where we need it right there in front of those steps. That's kind of the idea of that open space.
Any other thoughts? So I feel like you have,
For the most part,
Do you have any questions?
I mean, I have an appeal, I guess, on behalf of the ownership group. There's been an application for a demolition grant, and we're hoping to get some type of, you've already expressed general support. And what we really need is some type of a letter or something that shows that the local jurisdiction would support the demolition in order to approve this grant. We know we still have to talk to the Historic Resources Commission, but I don't know if there's any mechanism to create a conditional approval or a letter of support that would allow us to secure that grant. And it could be conditional on a future application for a certificate of appropriateness or something, basically stating that the demolition would not be opposed by this board or this commission. And I don't know if that's even possible, but we'd really appreciate any help in helping make this project a reality.
This is Steph, I can speak to that a little bit. So this is a conceptual application, but if the commission feels as though they'd be comfortable with only the demolition piece, demolitions cannot take place unless a redevelopment plan for that same space has been approved. So the demolition would need to be conditioned on the final approval of the design and redevelopment plan for the site. And I cannot issue a COA for the demolition without the approval of the new construction. So what they would be provided is not a COA, but it would be a summary of the minutes stating, that conditional approval has been made for the demolition, showing the motion. And then I could put that meeting summary and, what happened in the form of like a notification letter. Essentially, it's notifying the applicant of what took place at the meeting. That's what could happen. But we can't just approve the demolition as a standalone item. It has to be connected to, this can't happen without the approval of, the addition and new construction. So that is an option, if that's something that the commission feels comfortable with.
well, how do you feel about that?
I feel fine about that because I wouldn't want to stop the application process and be a hindrance to that. And since there are conditions, particularly with what our rules are, I think that it's something that we should move on and support. This is a great opportunity, and I would not want this to be hindered because of an application process that's not approved because we've not been supportive.
Thank you. Belfast, have we done this before? We talk about precedents.
Not in my time stopping the commission. I can't speak to when Lewis or Daniel stopped the commission. I know when I worked in East Franklinton, it happened once for the approval of affordable housing for the demolition of the church. And they conditioned approval of the demolition on the construction being approved. This is interesting though, because this is undergoing concurrent review by the Historic Resources Commission. And I will say that typically the Historic Resources Commission approves, they vote on the application first because they're reviewing under stricter scrutiny with their historic guidelines. And then once it's approved by the Historic Resources Commission, then it comes to downtown for a vote. So, although technically you are able to take that decision today, it's not the typical order that we see. The site is, a historic resource. And I'm not on the Historic Resources Commission, so I don't know that I'm prepared to get into the technicalities of it, but the addition, the church is listed, from my understanding, it's listed on the register. And then I don't believe the addition is technically registered itself, it's just the church. But from our perspective, the addition is, it's tied into the church as into the structure. It's not a standalone building, it's connected to it. So you have this addition that's technically not on the register, connected into, with construction to a historic resource. So that's why it's going under review by the Historic Resources Commission. Does that make sense? So just know you'd be kind of going out of, like typically we like to see a vote by the Historic Resources Commission because of that stricter scrutiny, and then they come to the Downtown Commission. But you do technically have the option, and you feel comfortable voting on approving the demolition, conditioning it on the new construction, knowing that they have to still go to the Historic Commission, Resources to Commission to get, hopefully a similar vote by them as well. But at least in this case, we could do that. I could provide them the letter knowing they still have to go to the Historic Resources Commission and, advocate there. But it'd be a little out of order. So it would be maybe a precedent for this commission.
I mean, my thought is that maybe a letter saying that we understand that you have investigated renovation of the 1920s building and we see the problems with it. However, we want to get the feedback from the historic resources and we want to see the design, the final design before we could vote on it, but that we are in support of the direction you're going in, but we need to have those other elements in place. I don't know if that would be enough to just say like, we like the general direction, we're in support of what you're doing and why you're doing it, but we need the feedback from historic resources and we need, to see the final building before we could vote on demolition. What do you think?
Does that get you what, I know it's not what you need, does that get you to the next?
Probably not. The grant is, it's a federal grant that the state's administering. It's worth about $400,000 on our budget, so it's a pretty big, grant proposal that we're applying for. We expect them to ask for a follow-up on our application that shows approval for the project before they award the money. The approval is, by the local body that has jurisdiction over that. So even if the approval is conditional, we can still send that conditional approval in. And a lot of things would have to happen, I think, before we would even go out to bid on demolition. Certainly approval for the overall project by the two bodies. We have to reach a 70% fundraising target. That's our other, line item that has to happen before we would even start to entertain bids for this project. I think our big worry is that if we don't keep moving forward at a decent pace, we will lose access to that funding for the demolition, and then we have to find that somewhere else.
So ultimately, we can't demolish without a COA, right? So Tony, I think you bring up a good point, which is regarding the precedent. I think, in the record, we're here to support a civic use, a nonprofit. This isn't necessarily just, sort of private profit-related development and whatnot. So our support for this project and ultimate support for demolition isn't the same as demolition, because demolition is tied to our COA and whatnot. So I think broad strokes.
And our ultimate approval.
That's what exactly.
Right.
So,
That's not back.
yeah, I would be supportive. I think,
Yeah, you're heading in the right direction, right?
yeah,
It's based on our approval anyway, so it has to come back. That gets you what you need, which is the $400,000 potentially for the grant.
Yeah.
From the feds, so I'm in support.
Okay.
Jeff, obviously, is in support.
And if that's the way that, I'm deferring to you all, I just wanted to lay out what we typically do. But it will be a conditional support. So again, I am not going to issue a certificate of appropriateness. You're not getting that at the end of the day today.
Understood.
What you're getting is just a letter that summarizes what took place at the hearing and showing that the motion was condition of approval on motion by this and this on this date. So that's what you'll be getting, if that suffices for what you're looking for.
Yeah, we think that will take us to the next step in the application process.
I'm fine with that. That was pretty much what I was saying. I think my only big difference was I was saying, I want to hear what the, HRC says first. But I also think that when we go to look at the final, when we go to look at the final product and we have that information too, we're not issuing anything, but we're sort of like saying, we understand why you're going this direction and we support it contingent on the final design and other factors.
Yes.
I mean, when you think about federal grants, and I guess in my world, letters of support are pretty typical. And it's not saying, it's saying, yes, this should happen. It's saying we are in support of moving forward.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it is very important that we be in support of that, because this is a great opportunity for repurposing a church that has not really been utilized to its fullest potential. And $400,000 is meaningful,
It is.
particularly when you're doing a capital campaign, because it is utilized to leverage additional dollars to come into your campaign to basically to move it forward. So even though I know we're going out of order with the HRC, it's still something that is important to downtown and really to the vibrancy. So I am in agreement with what you've said. I understand your precedent point, but as I said, I just think it's important as we move forward. I think what you've done, particularly with the extension that you've put on, I remember the extension that they put onto the Lincoln Theater. That looks awful. This is such a better representation of what an entrance can look like. And thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm comfortable. I mean, after hearing what everybody said, I definitely think that what everybody, what your concerns are much more important than how I was thinking about it. So I'm in full support of that.
Thank you.
And so this is staff, I have a suggested motion. If the commission, wants to take it, there would be approval of the demolition of the 1920s addition on the condition that the final design and addition is approved. So that's what the motion, or my suggestion to you guys decide.
Well, is that what the content of the letter would say?
Yeah, so the motion would be included. It's part of the motion. So it'd state what the motion was, who seconded, or who made the motion, who seconded, and then what the vote was. Yeah.
Mark, you got something?
I was gonna jump in, sorry, Mark Vervillas, planning administrator. And, Belkis, but I think what we should, acting chair, I want to entertain, is, I think what you're after is a letter of support, if I understand right. And I think you were on the right track, Belkis, with a summary of the input that's been given But I don't think, I'm wondering, to your point, if we stay away from any reference to a condition COA on demolition as much as general support for a project, recognizing that these steps need to be taken, and I think that gets us away from precedent in regard to action taken on a demolition previous to approval, that it's really just a global, and that's what I'm hearing from you all. So I wanted to throw that out, and it may be going a step too far, but frankly, I think the challenge will be for us to get the language right, and bring it back to, you know, Chair Whitman and Jana, as you were here sitting in the chair today. And if we get it right, we should consider bringing the same language to the HRC, and perhaps they could consider a joint letter, signing the same letter. Because optimally, we want to be all on the same page. Again, as long as there's clarity as the necessary steps that need to be taken in regard to approval of the final design, which then would, trigger the potential approval of the demolition. But we should be talking about a much more general global letter here to me, which seems like something we could craft and bring back for your all signature.
But the general letter would certainly clearly state that this is one of the bodies that would make the ultimate decision on demolition.
Exactly, as well as the HRC, and that's one reason I think is maybe they could bring them right into this, because we would be beholden to list that out anyhow.
How far are you with you said that the HRC is looking at this at the same time. So how far are you in that process with them?
We submitted this package to them to have it reviewed last Thursday, but the hearing was canceled.
So that makes it difficult because you would have known already.
Yep. When's your deadline for the grant application?
Honestly, I expected it to have already passed. It's a slow, process, slower than I expected it to be. We initially applied back in January with the idea that we would be asked sometime in May to update our application for the approvals.
Yeah.
So we have not received that request for an update yet, but I expect it to come soon. I do like the approach of the joint commissions because both commissions would need to weigh in as the local.
And they may or may not bite on that, but I think it's worth proposing. It would be a way to kind of create some glue.
So Mark, I just want to clarify on what our process would be. So in this instance, we could craft some sort of support / meeting notification letter from both Downtown Commission and HRC, getting signatures from both of those bodies' chairs, and then supplying that to the applicant in this instance, just, because of the unique place that we're in, given their funding and whatnot. Is that correct?
I guess I'm just seeing this as almost outside of the application process
Okay.
itself. That really, this is just the downtown, that would be within the purview of the downtown commission to indicate a global, indication of support for a project at this location, which utilizes the primary structure and considers the prospect of demolition with addition, blah, blah, blah. And that's something that, we could possibly work with Sam on getting some language right, but I think it would be brief, a couple of very brief sentences that really just indicate support for a project at this location. And then probably from our perspective, a long list of conditions that we would need to include in there, which would be understood.
And a summary of what the commission said today as well from the meeting minutes. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's good. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we won't take action then today, but we'll work behind the scenes in short order to get a letter drafted. We can workshop the language to make sure it fits what y'all are looking for. Does that sound like a good path forward?
Yeah.
Okay. Glad you were here, Mark.
Oh,
Okay, well,
It's a new one for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your support.
Thank you so much. I'll be in touch soon.
So our next order of business is staff approved applications. And has everybody taken a look at those? Does anybody have any questions or comments on any of these? There were a number of them. See about, it looks like about 9 of them. And if not, we could have a motion for approval.
So move.
And a second.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Sorry.
Well, we're just approving the staff approval applications.
The ones that have been approved.
Yes, the ones that staff has approved, not this, not the vote. I mean, not the vote on these, the common list. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Great. All right, so now, we are on to new business. And I think that the one thing I'm going to mention is that we have the Zone in Gallery, which is at 141 North Front Street in the community room, where we can go after this meeting and look at the proposed zoning updates and then we have no old business. Do we, Belkis? I don't think so. We don't have.
Excuse me, I have, the new business.
Sure.
I think we should congratulate 2 of our members that have been named to Business First, 125 most influential people in Columbus.
Yeah.
Rudy and Otto. Here.
Otto, we'll wait till he comes back because he went to the restroom.
Okay.
But that's not congratulations, Trudy. So we'll wait till Otto comes back.
Okay.
And then we'll make the congratulations. So, I don't know, we'll wait, we could adjourn, but I want to wait till he comes back.
Well, and then we won't adjourn because we still need to discuss the common staff.
Oh, that's right, of course. So, the common staff approval list, I think today we were going to vote on it, but, I had spoken with Belkis and we could discuss it a little bit first and talk about any items that, that we have questions on or comments. And
I have, Mark Drabilis, our planning administrator, is here with us. So Clea and I are just gonna give a refresher of what we're proposing. And, we did get some very thoughtful questions and feedback. So we're going to touch on a few of those items specifically as well.
Okay.
And then we can turn it over for discussion and answer any questions. Otto, congratulations.
On what?
That you're back.
Back in time.
Back in time.
What was the award?
But this is first.
Business first.
Business First,
Oh.
125
Yeah.
most important
Thank
people in Columbus.
Yes, you're very welcome.
Well, congratulations to both of you. What an
Yeah.
honor. Thank you for everything you do for the community.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark, you want to take it away?
Yeah, hi all again, Mark Drabilis, Planning Administrator, and thanks for letting me butt in there a little bit on that previous case. And congratulations, totally cool that 2 of the 125 here on our own downtown commission, and thanks to the rest of you as always for your service, and welcome Jeff. Glad to have Jeff on the commission. So just checking in on this staff approval list, as Belkis said. We're here, we're looking for your support this morning on the adoption of the revised staff approval list, which would replace the existing one that's been in place for about 10 years. I asked me and other Jamie Goodman asked Belkis actually about a year ago to take a look at this matter because each one of the commissions per code has their own staff approval list. And they really hadn't gotten a look in a long time. And we're like, you know what, we should just do some housekeeping here, review them all, and to the degree possible, sync them up when there's opportunities, get the language straight for the purpose of clarity, and make sure that we're doing this to do justice. And Belkis has done a great job on it and organizing staff and doing research and what are other cities doing in this regard and so forth and so on. In general, my impression is that her and others' research really confirmed the list that we have. There wasn't any grand changes, but it was affirming. Since we came up with the draft, we reached out to commissions, all the commissions. There was at least two one-on-one meetings with Chair Whitman. We've talked to him recently. And we did an all chairs meeting towards the end of the year. I think generally it's gone well. All the other boards and commissions have supported and adopted the list. So we're here now with you all. And Belkis, you had a couple of comments.
You know, the challenge that we've seen, and I think the reason why Mark charged our division to look at this is our existing lists all differ from one another. You know, some are quite specific, some are quite vague. Some haven't been touched since 2004. This one hasn't been touched since 2014. And then some are online and some are not. So we just wanted to kind of take a revisit at all of them, streamline them how we can, work to maybe expand them if at all possible, and just have a common list too for the public. So it's very easy to understand what can staff approve and what has to go before the commission. And so, you know, we've been working, like I said, in the past year to create a common staff approval list. The current list that we're working from has 31 items. 30 of those 31 items were folded into the new common staff approval list. One was deleted, and that's related to public art because that item no longer reflects the process by which we review and approve public art. The Art Commission is the final deciding authority on all public art, and the Downtown Commission simply makes a recommendation. So in the future, we work to clarify that so that no longer will be on the staff approval list. Instead, public art will be reviewed for recommendation by you all, and then it would, you know, that letter would go to the Art Commission, just saying that you all support it, and then Art Commission would make the final. So that was a housekeeping item as to why that was removed. And then in total, the new list has 24 items, so we've streamlined it, combined some items into one item. So it's 10 reworded items, 7 unchanged items, and 7 new items. And I was going through, you know, there's really a lot of opportunities to gain consistency again and clarity. And there are checks and balances in place if you want to talk about those, Mark, and some of the benefits.
Sure. I mean, long story short is we're going to treat this with, you know, great care because we don't want to overstep our bounds. And any cases are reviewed by Belkis, of course, for consistency with code and guidelines. And she always talks to at least one member of management, generally Christopher Lohr, but we'll all huddle up. We may get 3 or 4 of us together. We're uncertain. I know that there's calls and Lewis, and we'll call the chair if we're like, hey, what do we think about this? And I think that the chair has a good sense oftentimes of like, no, the commission could see this, or no, we get it. And so, you know, we take it very seriously. And I think that's the bottom line. We'll be cautious about overstepping any bounds.
And how I do my reviews is, let's say 5 guidelines apply, and I'm looking at it and I see that this staff approved item meets 4 of the 5 guidelines. Well, I don't staff approve that then because it's not meeting every single one. So then I go back to the applicant and I say, hey, if you modify your application in this way, you'll meet every single one, but if you feel strongly about your proposal, you can leave it, but we'll have to bring it before the commission next month. I'm not going to staff approve this. So that's how I've been doing it. And again, I'm always reviewing against the staff approval list to see if I can even do it. And then if I can, I'm reviewing it against applicable guidelines. And I did pull out a couple, because I know it can be hard to like visualize, well, what would go before staff and then what would go before the commission. So I have a couple that touch on some of the feedback as well. So this is an ADA improvement example. We don't have to read the guidelines, but as you just see below, there are guidelines that apply to this scenario with regards to building materials, how new construction should be handled, how front facing and main facade should be handled, and what type of materials are appropriate and compatibility with scale surrounding. I couldn't find a standalone ADA improvement for downtown. Again, I've only staffed for a year, right? So Lewis may know something that I don't. But what I did find is one that I did in East Franklinton. This is an existing school that's over there on State Street. And all they wanted was a rear ADA ramp on their building. This building was built, I think, in the 50s or the 60s. And they were having issues with kids, you know, getting in and out. And so they just wanted this rear addition. The East Franklinton guidelines had guidelines regarding this type of thing. It was on a rear facade. This is not a historic building, and it wasn't impacting the materials of the building either or an architectural feature. And so I felt comfortable staff approving it. So this is an example if something like this happened downtown, where I'd feel comfortable staff approving it. But in downtown, typically we see ADA access elements as a part of a larger development proposal. And maybe that's why I couldn't find a specific example for downtown. But that's that. And then, I know when we say all landscaping and hardscaping, it sounds a little intimidating, like, oh my gosh, she's gonna be approving parks and plazas and the Capitol line. I'm not gonna approve the Capitol line. But what I am comfortable doing based on the guidelines, and again, the downtown design guidelines have a whole page about landscaping. And the reason we say hardscaping is because applicants get confused. They don't understand that we can look at a new paver or a new sidewalk treatment. It's called hardscaping. So it's just helping the public understand what that is. And right now on our current staff approval list, it's just this as well. It's the same thing. We just reworded it a little bit for clarity. But I always review against the landscaping guidelines in the plan. So this is an example of what I approved last year. This is an AEP substation, and they wanted to add they had some planter beds where all the plants had died, and they wanted to add some new ferns in there. And then they wanted to add a decorative wall because it was a concrete wall before. And so this is an example where I was able to staff approve it based on the code and guidelines. And, they're able they got it approved in a few days and they're able to improve that space. An example that I would not approve and that went before the commission is that sunken garden for the PNC building redevelopment. So, this is technically landscaping, but again, it rose to a level where it was just such a big impact that it was brought before the commission. So we've carried on with that cadence. Another example are mechanical systems. The guidelines have specific, they call out specifically mechanical systems. So the second bullet point and the small cell communication, so little cell towers that often go on top of building antennas. So there's specific guidelines for those. I always review against them. And again, if it doesn't meet any one of those, I bring it before the commission. They always do though. But this is an example that I did last year for Veterans Memorial. Towards the back of their building, they just needed, I guess, additional capacity for HVAC systems, and they were screened properly. So they're located here. So that's something that I approved. I couldn't think of a standalone mechanical system that had to go before the commission, but I just think it's kind of rare as they typically are part of a larger development proposal. I tried to find a fence, railing, or fire escape, but I couldn't find one, a standalone example. So I think if this were to be staff approved, it would be very rare. And honestly, with a fire escape, I've never really seen an application for a fire escape these days. I think it'd be part of it.
We don't do fire escapes anymore.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that language may even be outdated, but fencing and railings are typically a part of a larger development proposal. It's a railing for outdoor dining or, an additional detail for a larger plan. So those would be very rare for me to just staff approve it by itself. And then lastly are graphics. I know it says all graphics, but that's how it is right now. So right now I review and approve all graphics as long as it meets the guidelines. You see there's a whole page there, very specific. It's more than one page in the guidelines about graphics. But if they rise to a level in height, so if they're higher, there's specific guidelines where it's so high for a wall sign and so high for a projecting sign, it goes to you all for review. So you saw that today with Jeff Ruby's, but for example, there's this other one, Spaces, for a simple wall sign. It was low enough that I could review and approve it and met all of the guidelines for the walls. So those are just some examples. Same thing with outdoor dining, more simple ones that don't affect existing architecture. Are things that I feel comfortable reviewing and staff approving because there's specific guidelines for outdoor dining. But then ones where it's really impacting an existing facade and the materiality of that facade is changing, that's when I think it rises to a level like with Hanks, where I brought it to the commission. And again, I'm reviewing this with my managers, and honestly, I go to Lewis's office all the time and like, hey, Lewis, what do you think about this? You know, so with the parklet, actually, that's the one where I brought to him, he's like, I staff approved that last year, it's temporary, it's for a couple months, and it's, you know, similar to landscaping. So we always collaborate. And the last point I'm gonna make is, I know there's been a lot of discussion about the expiration of certificates of appropriateness and why that won't apply to downtown in this case. This is a directive of the zoning code. And so for us, you know, the downtown district code is silent on if the COA expired or not, except for admirals. Admirals do expire after 1 year. And in contrast, the university district code specifically states it in their code. And so since it's silent, we can't impose specific expiration dates at this time. But in the future, we could undertake a project, a provision where we update the code for the downtown district. And that's where maybe we could add that in at a future date. The nice thing about the common staff approval list is it's policy, not code. So our intention is to revisit it every year and tweak it based on how things are going and how things are working out. So what we're proposing today is, you know, our first iteration of this type of list, having a common list, knowing that, you know, we can update it as time goes by, and, you know, benefits for us, the applicant, and the public for clarity and efficiency. So yeah, I'm happy to, Mark and I are happy to take any questions. And you have some documents in front of you that go over the overview of what we're proposing, that, you know, translation reference sheet that's in yellow and green that I talked about last month, showing how the existing list items translate over to the proposed list, and then the draft proposed list in its finished form. And thanks for listening.
I think that was an excellent presentation, and as much as I dislike the idea of stamp time as what we're supposed to approve, I think you've answered all of my questions except for one, which is, there's one on re-roofing.
Okay, let's go to that.
And we had a re-roofing case, I think it was last month. And I guess, you know, if somebody comes in with a fire roof, they want to put a good fire roof on it, I think that absolutely. But if it's a sloping roof and that roof is a significant architectural feature, I'm not as comfortable with staff approval of that.
Okay.
It's just my, I don't remember what the case was, but it was.
a hotel.
It was the Sinista?
That was that hotel, yeah, and the way that worked was, they came to me for just the re-roofing, right? And I didn't know, and they didn't tell me that they were going to do then the facade treatment.
Right.
And if I would have known both of those things at the same time, I would have said, well, you know what, since you're doing the whole facade of all the elevations, let's throw the roof in that as well, because it ends up being one cohesive design change. So that's what I would have done. But unfortunately, I wasn't given that information by the applicant ahead of time. And again, I was just going by the staff approval list. I brought it to Lewis, and, you know, we all agreed that even though the roof was changing from green to gray, we can't tell someone what color. I mean, maybe if it's a like hot pink or
We tell
something.
people hit color all the time.
You all do, but I have to review
Yeah.
against code and guidelines, which don't.
That's my
comment.
point. I think
Right.
that's such a major design element to that building
Mhm.
that, and they were changing it. If it was a maintenance project and we just, like, it was gray, they were gonna make it gray again, okay, but if it's a shade, a major element of the facade, I think it should come to us.
Yeah, and I think maybe what we could do in this case is for re-roofing, it says re-roofing with like-for-like material. And then we could do asterisks, flat roofs only for downtown commission. We could do something like that if that meets, you know, what you're looking for. Because I do agree that pitched roofs, you know, they're a big element of the design. If they change, you're right, it can have a big impact. I think
And we might talk more about this around, maybe you all have insight. that really, I mean, when, the way I read that language is, we don't have to, somebody come to the downtown commission because they're reshingling. You know, you're reshingling, same material, same color, sloped, flat, what have you. You really, your all's role is design review, and reshingling or re-roofing is not design review. And perhaps there'd be some clarity in terms of like for like, in terms of form, shape, and color. You know, just a little more detail that, unless if I'm missing something, I don't think we're trying to reach beyond, because exactly, it's like you're you're changing the roof structure. It's like, that's a design element. But here, I think like for like material, I think is basically maintenance and re-roofing. So I think some clarity on language probably gets us there.
Yeah, we could do re-roofing with like for like material and then parentheses in form, shape, and color.
Yes.
Would that be helpful? Okay, that's easy to do there.
In looking at all the items, the questions that I had, they've all been answered by Belkis today with the examples. And really the only big outstanding one was the roofing, because of what had happened with I think Sonesta Inn.
Yeah. It just happened that we had a case on that.
Right. It's so interesting because that color, that roof is so significant. And then again, it impacted everything else they did.
In many ways that happened that way, because I think it is, I could see it, you know.
Yeah. The only other thing I can think of, even though it's small, is sometimes when you have those outdoor dining that are created in front of the building, and even if they're creating just a fence in front, it's sometimes just what the fence looks like really impacts that streetscape. So I don't know if that's something that can be put in as language. I mean, that's just my thought about it, that even though it's a very small item, that sometimes that does really create an aesthetic on the street, or that there's potential for something that's missed.
Yeah. So this says outdoor spaces should not create visual or physical obstacles or hazards to adjacent buildings, streetscape elements, pedestrian travel, or thoroughfares. Railing and fences must meet the requirement of the Department of Public Service. And then also for liquor control, patio design and border delineation material should be compatible with the primary structure in terms of architectural character, materials, and color. Like use of landscaping timbers, railroad ties, carpets, pressure treated wood, or similar material to demarcate patios and outdoor dining areas is not appropriate. Masonry walls or other permanent structures purposed to delineate outdoor spaces and public rights of way are not appropriate. So is those are guidelines that I follow, and if they're not meeting that, it would come to the commission. Is that level of detail comfortable for you, Jenna, or is there some other edit to be made, on this sidewalk dining element of the list?
I'm not really sure how to word it, but maybe something where if you feel that whatever is being proposed is somehow, contributory in terms of character or aesthetic, but if you feel that maybe it isn't, or it's too generic or something like that, then maybe you can run it by us or ask the chairman what he thinks.
I always look for an elevated form of design because it is the downtown district and the guidelines call for high quality materials especially. And then I feel like the guidelines that I just read off are detailed enough to guide me in reviewing, at their materials and the type of fencing and the transparency and all of that. And so if they were just wanting to throw up a pressure treated pine, fence, it wouldn't pass my muster. So I'd say, you need to change it to something high quality, or if we really, we can bring it to the commission for
What about the location of these things? Are they allowed everywhere for anybody, or how does that? Who decides whether or not it's appropriate to have the outdoor dining?
Public service. So given that sidewalk dining is typically located in the right of way, so they take a piece of a big sidewalk and use it for that. Public service has specific engineering rules and things like that, that they make the ultimate decision. So although
I'm thinking more like on ad murals, right? We no longer get to approve the content of an ad mural, but we still get to approve where ad murals are going to be. but I'm wondering if nine outdoor dining is like that, or if it's different.
I think it should be different.
You think, well,
I think it should be different. I don't think that it should come to us for approval. Again, I mean, what you're seeing right now in Columbus is really creating some pedestrian traffic, particularly along High Street. With what's happening with the Edwards developments, with Hanks and with Spec, with Gay Street. I mean, you're seeing a lot of people walking, and I think we want to see more of that. I mean, it started on Gay Street with Domici's and Tip Top, and now it's expanding, and you're thinking about this new, what is it,
the Dora,
not only the Dora, but
The Capitol line.
the Capitol line.
yeah,
I think that is really going to be very instrumental and more outdoor dining coming in. I think that that's what people want. I know that's what I want living downtown.
And to add to that, the downtown guidelines also talk about promoting walkability, promoting connectivity, eyes on the street. So I don't know that as a division, someone would say, hey, we want to put some outdoor dining, and us say, no, it's more like, yes, but what is it going to look like? And is it going to meet the guidelines and have that high quality, materiality and design?
If it's a yes or a no,
right.
I think.
We want to encourage outdoor dining and, having that connectivity to the public realm. Any other questions, or if not, I'd love, we are hoping for a positive vote. And maybe it could be on the condition that the re-roofing item be modified to include, form, shape, and color. And then we can update the verbiage on the list, and then that can get posted.
Well, because I'm supportive, just a couple comments, and I did like a 19-year tour of duty on Brewery District Commission. I've always found the staff approvals are really, a process that goes well, and, I've never felt like, the commission was sidetracked. But just in terms of consistency and thinking about how your applicants read this, and I'm not focusing on this because I'm one of the landscape architects along with Tony, but when I look at the word all in front of landscaping, and then go down to minor building changes, and then go down to the lighting not to exceed 24 feet, blah, 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 blah. I just wonder if the right phrasing there isn't minor landscaping projects or like for like upgrades and renovations, or, same thing for minor building changes. And I wonder, if a lighting project turns into something bigger than a couple fixture upgrades or a like for like replacement, if that isn't something that we should see, or at least have it be worded a little bit more consistently. One of the things I worry about with the landscaping is that applicants see this and they're like, hey guys, did you hear we don't have to bring our landscape to downtown commission anymore? And that seems like a little tricky. Like, frankly, I really don't care about landscaping, but like site design, I think there ultimately is an impact on architecture and building programming and so on and so forth. And I don't want to, get into the phrasing too much, but that one kind of, I don't know, stirs me up just a little bit.
Would it be helpful then, instead of saying all landscaping and hardscaping, it could say, maybe just remove the word all? So
I mean, I would say, just like you have minor building changes, minor landscaping, just like you have minor building changes, minor lighting projects, something like that. That's how I would read it.
I think that would be supportable, and that's a good meeting zone solution, because that's what I'm doing at the end.
Yeah, that's the intent.
Yeah,
that's the intent.
Because when I did see that, that's when I had commented to Belkis, and then she explained it, and I was comfortable, but still the language there it might be, like you
No, I
said,
think
confusing
it's
to applicants or set a tone.
Yeah.
And in those examples that I was giving too, they're all minor, major, moderate to major.
Yeah.
Those two guys.
And it works well. I think the word all is obscuring.
Yeah, and if you think like on the code side, we really hesitate ever putting the word all in a code, or if you're directing someone like, well, you said all.
Yeah.
Did you mean it or did you not mean it? So,
Yeah.
No, good at it for sure.
No, that's a great edit. Let's do that. Where was the lighting piece again?
It was on the spreadsheet, bottom third. Lighting not to exceed, or bottom 2/3 maybe,
Oh,
but
lighting fixtures.
yeah,
Oh, okay. So this is actually covered under minor building of
I
site.
got it.
So that's on the current list, and the way it got translated is now that's under minor building or site. change.
Okay.
And so.
Yeah.
So we have minor building or site changes, generally single elements. So someone can't come to me and say, well, I have a minor change of the lighting and the window and the door and it's like, no, that's adding up to a whole project and that's gonna go to the commission.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, we'll say minor landscaping and hardscapes and then the re-roofing. And if those are, both, agreed on modifications.
I'll move approval of the list as we just modified it.
Okay.
Second.
And all in favor
Aye.
and opposed? Okay, so the motion carries. Okay,
Thank you all.
so I think we are actually in adjournment.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for being here today.
Thank you, Dan.